The way we talk about immigration, the way I hear it discussed out in the media and among people and so on, is that it's really like a national divide between, good people and bad people, or moral people and immoral people, and compassionate people and uncompassionate people. It's just a divide about that. That we really, it gets narrowed down into singular issues. So we're really at an impasse about very narrow range of issues. And the only way to understand the impasse, to really understand the issue, this immigration, is to really see the many, many different facets that go into immigration as an issue. I'm picking out a whole bunch of them. If you look at all these issues, man, it is a lot of things that are going on. And frankly, these are the two that we're talking about all the time. It's morality and justice, and law and stability. And if you lean left, it's all about morality and justice. And if you lean right, it's all about law and stability. But look at all these other ones that are part of this. If immigration were really this simple, we'd have resolved it a long time ago. What's the virtue of being a nation that's governed by the rule of law?
It's very important to follow the rule of law. I mean, we have rules for a reason, and that's why we follow the Constitution. It's the oldest document in time, but we still follow it because those rules are important.
Why are they important? What are they intended to prevent or intended to enable?
I think it's the foundation of our country. It makes sure that there is that line for everyone to follow. And I think it's it sets a standard of what you can do, and what it means to be an American, I guess.
Okay, and now you got these different layers of government, right? You have the federal, you have the state, you have the county level, you have the local level. So you got a lot of people putting a lot of things together. And what happens if we're not following similar codes of conduct or rules of law?
I think it's kind of like a chain reaction. If one branch doesn't follow something, I think it follows suit. Each branch it's checks and balances.
Yeah, okay.
We have a checks and balances, so we kind of check on each branch. So they kind of all have to follow each other. And so we hold each other accountable.
It also prevents corruption, right? Do you think about what's corrupt? Do you have any thought on that? Corruption? Do you see that?
Yes, I think. We all have this instinct to follow law or follow each other. I mean, every country has it, every nation, we all have our own code of conduct. And I think we naturally follow that, or we naturally create that. And so corruption just happens when there's one person who just doesn't believe in that or tries to use it for their own gain.
Yeah, okay, or a group of people. So what are the consequences of it? Of not enforcing laws that are on the books?
I think some consequences. I mean, if you think the law, I mean, there's jail, incarceration. There's also your peers. They see you as somebody who didn't follow the rules, the labeling theory kind of thing. I think that's important.
Let's go to a Friday night at midnight, okay? And there's no police. The police are gone. What are you going to say to yourself?
I probably wouldn't leave the house. Or at least I would take precautions, but I also try to see the best in people. Mm-hmm. I don't necessarily think that if someone's behind me that they're going to hurt me, or everybody's intent on breaking the law. So
okay, so how about this? How about also the other thing is the law exists to ensure for you and me. So it's if we follow the law, if other people break the laws that we're following, there's going to be consequences. So they're not going to get ahead. They're not going to be able to get things that we don't get. There's a level of fairness. Go back to the fairness question, right? The system is working. People are following. It's fair. It's fair for you. It's fair for me.
But I think sometimes people get stuck in this system. They get the consequence for their action. Let's say it's for a minor offense, and all of a sudden that has changed the whole course of their life, and now they can't ever get rid of that. So if they got a misdemeanor, a felony, and it's a drug charge or something, they will forever be affected by that one thing. So I think those consequences can also have a huge effect on people and what they do in their future.
Now you got this immigration issue, right? We've got, let's say, 12 to 14 million undocumented immigrants here. You know, we don't know who they are. Things are happening.
America was built on immigrants. We have ancestors in all of our lives that were immigrants. I don't know when it became a moral issue like you were talking about.
Well, it's always been a moral issue.
I see both sides when it comes to like economy.
No, but stick with this one.
Yeah.
Stick with this one. The one thing immigrants don't want anywhere in the world is to get sent back home, especially if you don't have documentation. So you want to do everything by the book as you possibly can, which is why we see crime rates among undocumented immigrants. They're lower than documented people everywhere in the world. But still, you got like this system where we don't know who these people are and what they're doing and where they are. And like, is that okay? Like, is that a problem? How is that a problem?
I think it is an issue, especially like you said, like not knowing what people are doing, not knowing if they're doing something bad or good. It can be bad.
Like, if we're not going to apply the law here to like this group of people in the classroom, then people in the other 5 sections are going to be thinking, well, they're not applying the law there. So wouldn't it be natural for people to be like, well, why should I follow the law? Like, why should it matter for me? Like, it starts to call everything into question.
I think the like immigration process, like getting your papers, is there for a reason. But the reason that there's so many undocumented immigrants is because the system is so hard. And they're not able to get the papers. So there's like, what's the point of me waiting 20 years to get my...
Yeah, but the system's hard because it is hard.
Yeah.
You start working for me, and I say like, hey, listen, I'm going to start you at $20 an hour. And you're thinking, I want $30 an hour. I need 30 right now. And I'm like, well, you're only going to get 20 an hour. But if you work for a while, you'll get 30. And so, therefore, you start stealing from me. Because you're only making 20 and you want 30. And I'm like, dude, you can't steal from me. We agreed on 20. So, yeah, so people come. It's really hard for people to get citizenship, but does that mean it's okay for people to just sneak over the border and be here illegally?
No.
I mean, you see, I just put you on a slippery slope, right?
Yeah.
So now what do you do?
I think it's a lot to put on one person to be able to make that decision. But I don't think I think people should at least try to go through the process. And
if they can't try, then you're saying our laws are not important enough. That like, yeah, you should try, but our laws aren't that important. So just try, but if you can't, whatever, sneak in.
No, not necessarily. But we also do have like in the law that people who are allowed to come here if they're trying to seek asylum, and that's there for a reason.
Okay, so let me ask you this question. How do you decide? This guy who I was talking to in Mexico, right? He's from Guatemala. I was like, dude, I asked him. So first, I told him, look, man, you need to go back home because you're never going to make it across the border. He didn't know. He's from this little community in Guatemala. He's not reading the news. The guy, he has no idea what's going on at the border. And Lori, my wife and I are telling him, bro, actually, everything's changed now. So, you came up here from Guatemala, but you need to just go back home because you're never going to get across the border. And it's like, okay. He said, but I want to file for asylum. And I said, how are you going to file for asylum? Tell me why you deserve asylum. And he came up with some story. And I'm like, how do I know that's true? I'm like, can you call your wife on the phone? No, because his wife doesn't have a phone. How do I know it's true? So now you run into this problem.
Yeah, I would say like that's when it comes. I feel like there should be a different program that specifically like helps people who've been here maybe undocumented for 10 years or something, and they go through a different process where they're here, they've never broken the law, they've done everything right. Like it's just they've never gotten it. I feel like there has to be different programs because people are getting stuck in this limbo or just being let in, or I don't think that every immigrant is coming in here thinking they want to break the law, because like you said, they're afraid, because if they break the law, even a minor offense, there's a chance that they'll get deported.
Okay. Yeah, no, I like your response. It's a great response. And there are other pathways for asylum seekers, and there's a lot of research. One of the reasons it takes a long time is because we are doing our research on people. So, what are the social costs to enforcement?
I think we're seeing it right now.
What are you seeing?
People are angry. People are getting hurt, and there are people
who's angry.
The immigrants, people who've been here, or people who are legally here, going through the process. A lot of people have been going through the process for years, and then they get taken right back, or in some cases, they've never been to their home country and they're being sent there with nothing.
Also, all the protesters, right?
Yes, the protesters. I think there's just a lot of anger, and we're seeing the social cost of that, and it's causing a lot of division.
So you study criminology.
Yes.
And so by nature of everything you study, you also are studying social breakdown and division and so on. So I'm seeing a lot of division. I'm hearing you're seeing the same thing. So what's that do for us as a nation? Like, what are the consequences of that?
It breaks us apart. We start associating different friends in different classes, or if we have a friend that believes one thing, we're not friends with them ever again. Or on social media, there's a lot of polarization too, or the way that the news is presented. You don't know if you're getting the right information because there's so much division, because they want to push one agenda.
Yeah. Yep, exactly. One side wants to push one. My wife had a conversation with someone the other day who goes up to protest at the detention center, the ICE detention center here, just like 30 miles outside of town. She goes up every day. She's very religious, very Christian, goes up, not every day, but several times a week. And she said, well, I protest all these ICE people, but they're actually very nice to me.
I think we're forgetting there's humans behind both sides.
Okay.
We're all human. I think a lot really has to do with like who's in power, or who gives charge. I think it has to do a lot with that.
So you have Native American ancestry roots, right?
Yes, I do, yeah.
Okay. Now, how do Native Americans see this?
Well, they see everyone as immigrants because they were here first. And right now, they really feel for the people who are getting hurt from this, because we've had our land taken. And it's funny that they're telling other people that they're not supposed to be here when they're not supposed to be here either.
So for them, it's kind of ironic that people came in. They weren't invited, right? They came.
They were accepted with open arms. Like, we accepted Columbus, and we told him to come in. We helped him, and then he stabbed us in the back. And then
so all along so one after another, more and more immigrants coming, more and more. They just kept pushing, wanting more and more land, selling the land that was your ancestors' land, and now deciding who is and is not legal. So from that perspective, it's kind of odd.
Yeah, and Native American culture, it's like land isn't like private property. It doesn't have a cost to it. It's part of our culture, and the land, we're so connected to it. So when we got pushed out and we had to be told to be on these reservations, it was hurtful, because that area that they told us we couldn't be on is our culture, is our ancestry. So it's just really ironic.
So we're up here having this conversation about the law, the rule of law, and the importance of the rule of law. But the voice of a significant percentage of which is about 2% of the U.S. population, are indigenous peoples. Their voice isn't part of that conversation of the rule of law. So, gentlemen, you got to include that in. Don't forget. So now we just really got on a slippery slope, because if we're going to invite your ancestor, your people, right? Because you're mixed. But if we're going to invite that part of you in, now it gets really, really, really complicated. So the rule of law. I mean, you can't just decide randomly, random people decide which laws we're going to follow and which ones we're not going to follow. So let's say we're going to try to follow them all. It's like when you're driving down 80, you're driving on the highway, and it's acceptable to drive up to like 10 miles over the speed limit. But if you go 11 miles over the speed limit, the cops give you a ticket. It's like, well, hang on a second, man. The speed limit's the speed limit. So the question becomes, how much should we spend? How much social capital should we spend? Like, we got to send some people back home.
Yeah, I definitely don't think everybody, if we let everybody in, it would be too much. It would be happening. So I definitely think we have to make that hard decision to send some people back. But it has always been done better and not so harshly. And I think that's like a big thing. And it's like if you don't get citizenship, like you get sent back, I don't think that's necessarily like a bad thing. But I think if you're in the process of getting your citizenship and you're just taken without any due process, I think that's where it's at. I think also the people in charge also have to follow the law, not make new ones.
Okay. So there's another side, right? So whatever they're doing, whatever the government is doing, how the government is making these decisions, you all got to like come up with some kind of standard. What you do in Texas has to be the same thing you do in Minnesota, let's say.
Everyone is allowed due process, and that's written. We're all allowed due process.
What about, are people allowed due process when they're not citizens?
Yes.
So once you're here, you're allowed a certain amount of due process?
Yeah.
Okay.
First off, I do agree that people in the process of getting the citizenship should be allowed to continue that process. And the statement that I'd like to say is that every country, I believe, has the right to prioritize its people and its economy, the health of both. And when they see lots of people in the country illegally, yes, it's a common assumption to say, let's get rid of them. But when we're thinking about the economy,
hang on. Don't go there. We're going to go there next class.
Next class,
All
okay.
Right. So you said when there are lots of people, but the problem is, what's lots of people?
I think it's people that you can't account for or manage.
What's lots, though? What is that? We can manage a lot of, you know what I mean? Like, that's a question. So, gentlemen, you got that, right? Lots of people, make sure you define that for us, because that's going to be really important when you decide on our immigration policy.
This has all been really interesting, and you were saying what's lots of people, and what I've really been getting from this whole class is that it's really complicated, and every immigrant has a different situation, and that's why my core thought on this whole thing is the importance of due process, because every single immigrant has their own story. They have their reasons for being here, their reasons for leaving their home country. I mean, they have, if they committed a crime, they have that background. There's so much complicatedness to it.
Okay.
And if we don't allow people to have due process, then we're throwing that out.
Okay.
And there's no way to solve it.
All right, Harper, you ready? What percentage of the national budget do you want to spend on due process for 140 million people who would like to come to the United States?
Yeah, too much.
I mean, now you got a problem, right?
Yeah.
I agree with you.
Money.
Yeah, we need due process, but how much are you going to spend?
Didn't they raise the budget for ICE?
Yeah.
And I feel like there could be
move that to due process?
Well, not all of it, because I don't necessarily think border control is a bad thing at all. But that due process should be the more important than the control part.
Okay. All right, man. See this here? Harper, what you've gotten so far is how complicated it is. We're only on 2 of the circles. And we're only on 2. We got 6 more to go.